Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Deep Dive podcast. Very special episode this week, as not only do we have a guest, but we're going to be taking a deep dive into the NHL's, prior to us, most recent expansion team, the Vegas Golden Knights. Let's not, beat around the bush at all, RJ. Why don't you go ahead and introduce our guest this week?
Yes, so with the Kraken face of the Golden Knights twice this week, our guest on the podcast is Ken Boehlke from SinBin.Vegas. They're an independent website covering the Vegas Golden Knights. I believe the first one completely dedicated to covering the team. I mean, you guys launched the site in 2015, right?
That's correct. Well, at least we like to say that we're the first one. If there was another one out there, we don't care. We do not recognize them having existed.
There you go. Well, regardless, very early on it, and I've enjoyed you guys' coverage of the team, even growing up a Sharks fan, during the height of that rivalry. So that should tell everyone something. You guys do a good job. Thank you for joining us, Ken.
You got it. Thanks for having me. I don't know about that whole Sharks fan thing. You're in a much better place now.
Yes, for sure.
just a little bit. All right. So, Ken, before the season started, I think we both, felt like our teams were going to be in very different places than they are in now. Certainly we felt that way. And a lot of people had Vegas as, kind of the runaway division winners this year. Pacific was supposed to be, pretty easy for them. And then, some of us, including some people on this podcast, it's not important who though, right, RJ? Maybe even had Vegas as like a cup favorite. But season kind of hasn't gone that way for Vegas this year. Why don't you just kind of give us a quick recap of how Vegas has ended up in this spot where they're just kind of clinging on to a playoff spot?
Well, I think Seattle fans will remember the first game Vegas played this season. Wild game. That was a fun game. Now that I'm thinking back to that was great. 3-0. Golden Knights blew it. And they scored another one, the stick twirl, and the Golden Knights got all pissy about the stick twirl. What a night that was. That was fantastic. That was basically the high point of the Golden Knights season. Like, as ridiculous as that sounds, the very next game, they went to LA. They got blasted like 6-2, or I don't even remember what the final score was because I stopped paying attention, and I was there. I actually drove to LA, and I stopped paying attention because they were getting their butts kicked so bad. Mark Stone had his first instance of this back issue that's been going on all season. Max Pacioretty broke his foot in that game. From there, they actually lost 3 more. They went 1-4 to start the season. They kind of climbed back, and they've had a whole bunch of injuries the entire season. Basically, no one has played all the games. Literally, they do not have a player that's played every single game this season. They had one, and they healthy scratched him, which I feel like they're probably like, damn, we should have never done that. And so what's happened is they've kind of had this piecemeal roster. You might have heard of that idea before. That has not really ever gelled together. They've had their good moments, they've had their bad moments, but they've been very inconsistent. You don't necessarily know where you're going to get good performances and where you're going to get bad performances on any given night. And because of that, they're dropping points to teams like Buffalo and Philadelphia a couple times, and then a couple nights ago you had or was it yesterday? I don't remember. Yesterday they almost lost to Chicago in a game that was absolutely wild. So they're not very good right now, but they are finally, it seems, starting to funnel some of the health back in. I don't think you're going to see a healthy team in these next 2 games. Maybe Alec Martinez is healthy, an outside chance. Maybe there's like a Braden McNabb that pops in there, but you're still looking at a team that's not very good and fighting for their playoff lives that, in my opinion, even if they get there, it's not going to do much good.
Yeah, it's been rough, certainly with the injuries. I think that's probably a big reason there. And yeah, how about that game yesterday? Chicago.
Wild.
Yeah, that's just.
I mean, I thought the season was over. Like we've been talking about, they need to win like 11 of 15, possibly 12 of 15 going into last night's game or yesterday afternoon. They're down 3-0 to one of the worst teams in the league. Like, I actually like Seattle's team a heck of a lot better than I like the current Chicago team after they sold off a bunch of pieces, and they just don't seem to care. And Vegas is just getting stomped by them. It's like, man, this is not good. And then hockey.
Yeah.
Yep. That is hockey for sure.
That's the way it goes. I guess kind of a quick follow up. What area of the Golden Knights game do you feel like has really suffered the most this season, whether it's because of injuries or just poor play? Like, is it scoring, goaltending, defense, just special teams?
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
answering your question. But for the most part, I would say the biggest drop off this season than what we've seen in the past is the way they defend. Last year, they won the Jennings Trophy. They were actually allowed the least amount of goals in the entire league. Now, that's also important to note that they also played one of the easiest schedules in the history of the NHL, playing in a West, or what I think it was called the West Division. That was a complete joke. It was really, really bad. 3 California teams that were disastrous, and Arizona, which was worse than those teams. So significantly better than the division that they're playing in this season. And I still don't think this division's all that good, but they just don't defend at the same level. Like, if you have extended zone time against the Golden Knights, it's more than likely they're going to drop a coverage and give you a wide open opportunity, and then comes up to the goalie whether he stops it or not. They've had their scoring woes. That's been fairly common throughout the history of the franchise, except for their first season. Like, that's not all that surprising that, if they have extended zone time, they don't generate great chances. They live on the outside. Teams that pack it in kind of don't allow much of anything, and they blame the goalie every single night where it's not the other goalie. And we know that because then they'll score goals like on Kevin Lankinen where he just whiffed on a glove save. So, like, that's been a huge part of it. Special teams was the one that was the big one going out of last season. They went like 0 for 18 in a playoff series and a conference championship, and you can't do that. Coming into this season, it's a little better. Eichel's helped that. His entries really help a lot because now they're basically an automatic entry getting in. So, it's all of the above, but I would say defending is probably the biggest thing. And the one I didn't mention is goalies, because I think the goalies have been okay. Like, I don't think the goalies have been awesome. I don't think the goalies have been horrible. They've been okay, and that's enough. I'm not blaming anything on them. I don't think they've drag this team to a playoff spot, which they possibly could have, and they used to have a guy that maybe could have done that they gave away for nothing. But that's a different, that's a different animal in and of itself.
Yeah, it is. Overall, sounds pretty similar to what we've been having to deal with, on RJ.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit everything going wrong, if something goes right, then something else pops up. And I do just have to really quickly mention the the former Sharks fan side of me is enjoyed watching the Steve Spott power play work its magic in Vegas.
He actually lost the job in many ways. They yanked it from him a month
did
ago,
they
not
finally?
even a month ago. Yeah,
Okay.
and like they didn't make a big deal of it. He was in the middle of a road trip, and all of a sudden the other guy's working with the power play, and he's not. And they asked, and the answer was something along the lines of like, we like to get different voices. We're 50 games into the season. Like, no, you definitely just pulled the job. And like, it's Pete DeBoer's best friend, so he's not going to get fired. But yeah, he definitely in many ways lost that job, and it's gotten no better.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I remember from those Sharks teams.
Yeah,
But
it was not good, except for that one power play that I remember.
oh yeah, that one.
The
That was,
one.
that was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I have a sign commemorating it right here.
Yeah, I don't like that one. But so let's talk a little bit about organizational philosophy and the pressure to win, because I think at the start there was kind of a difference in attitudes between the Golden Knights and the Kraken. In Vegas, you've got Bill Foley outlining his very concrete Stanley Cup in 6 years timeline, relentless pursuit of victory, nothing less is acceptable. And I respect that, whereas the Kraken still obviously committed to having success, but, as far as setting expectations, it's a little less concrete. They definitely tried to lower them a bit given the way this season has gone. Always talking about we're not Vegas, we got to forge our own path. But I think the Kraken are kind of at a similar crossroads now as the Golden Knights were in 2017, where there kind of became this pressure to win right away. Of course, the big difference in Vegas's case, that pressure was actually driven by winning. But as a result, they kind of burned through all those assets that they got in the expansion draft, try and accelerate the competitiveness. What is it like when the organization makes that decision? Because it feels like you've experienced very strongly the ups and the downs of that.
Yeah, so like obviously it's significantly different than what you guys are going through. I think the expansion draft in and of itself was massively different. I think it's just a bad situation coming in under the same rules multiple years later. Like, they're not going to be as dumb as they were for Vegas. Like, I think people learned, like, wait a minute, none of that went well for any of us. All it did was help that team. Let's just not do that. And you saw it. You saw all the players that were available that the Kraken could have potentially gone for it this year. And I think they would have been a lot better than they could have been. But would they have been a cup contender? No. Like, if they had drafted all the best players on that list, is Carey Price even playing yet? I don't even know. But either way, like, they had gone for it. They're still maybe as good as the Kings, and like they're nowhere near Colorado or Carolina, Florida, Tampa. There's too many good teams. Even Calgary's real good. So I think with what has happened here, they were in a position where they did have a team that was legitimately good enough to win, and they kept proving it over and over and over again, and that just ramped up Bill Foley's belief of like, wait a minute, I said cup in 6, but like, why not just do it now? Like, it's basically what happened. And then they became like this ruthless, I don't even really know a good way to put it other than there was a belief that if we can upgrade in any area, no matter how small or large it can be, we will do it no matter what it does to the outside of the team or whatever, like chemistry wise or how the fan base reacts to it, any of it doesn't matter. If like, I always bring it back to like NHL 22 or the EA game. If you manage an EA game and you have a player who's a 90 and all of a sudden there's a player available for a 92, that's a 92, and all you have to give up is a 6-round pick to do it, you do it. You don't think twice, you do it. 92 greater than 90. That's how the Golden Knights have operated. That's how they end up with Alex Pietrangelo and wiping out Nate Schmidt, who Alex Pietrangelo is a better player than Nate Schmidt, but Nate Schmidt was a huge part of this team. So that's basically what has happened. And what you're talking about, the ups and downs, I guess we're experiencing the downs now of like the pressure has gotten pretty large, but they've also been so banged up that I don't know where they would be with this roster had they been healthy. Certainly not where they are now, but would they be Colorado? I'm not sure. So it's been a wild ride in that, they have been ruthless. They have thrown guys in the trash that probably should not have been thrown in the trash. And then, we have Vadim Shipachyov retiring. We have trades getting voided and vetoed. We have the, backstabbing thing. Like, you guys haven't experienced the whole NHL experience yet. You will. Give it time.
Yeah. No, there's been a lot there. And I guess because you just brought it up, go ahead and move this question up the list a little. Let's go ahead and talk about this voided trade situation, because obviously that's been one of the biggest stories around the NHL this past week or so. From your understanding of it on the Vegas side, like, just kind of how did that all go down?
First of all, you guys are probably lucky that it wasn't you, because it very well could have been Seattle, and that was a hell of a deal for Anaheim. Like,
yeah,
if you're Seattle, you got to be looking at that. Like, why didn't we do that? Like,
exactly.
And they still probably could. Like, that very well may happen. Like, I think they're going to have to do something eventually. So here's how I understand it. There was a trade of Dadanov from Ottawa to Vegas. They traded Nick Holden, a 2nd-round pick, for Evgeny Dadanov. In that trade, the idea of Dadonov's trade clause came up, and supposedly Vegas wasn't on there. But there was also some sort of information portrayed by Ottawa to the league and to the Golden Knights that his no trade clause was completely void, that they didn't submit it in time, that the email did not exist that showed their no trade clause, so therefore it was void. The Golden Knights operated under that pretense for the rest of the time that they've had Evgeny Dadonov. When they end up going to this deadline, they believe he doesn't have a no trade clause, even though they knew it existed, but they thought this is void because the league told us this is void. And so they went ahead and made that deal, which was a horrific deal. And the best thing that's ever happened to them, I think, is that it got voided. But just made this terrible deal to buy themselves $3.5 million of cap space, and then the whole thing blows up in the world's face. I honestly, and like, I'm very critical of the Golden Knights front office. I've been very critical of the organization throughout the course of my time. I will stand firmly to say I do not believe the Golden Knights could have known that this was going to happen. I do not think they acted in any sort of bad faith. I don't believe even the due diligence part where like they could have asked about it. I just don't buy that that's the case or that's what should have happened. I think they operated exactly how they should have, and then they were told, actually, no, you can't do that. And now that's just a horrible situation for them because they wanted to make that trade. And then the league told them, you cannot do that. Not a good situation when all of a sudden, now you can't make a trade. You can, but not the same way. So it was a wacky saga. It sucked for Dadonov. It's just, I mean, I guess it's over now, sort of, but now the dude's scoring game-winning goals in overtime, so.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I bet they're probably pretty happy yesterday that everything went down.
I don't know, though, because, like, if you, like, I'm interested in your opinion. So, like, if you're the GM, you make this deal, right? Mm-hmm. So you do a deal that clearly doesn't look good for you. You bought $3.5 million of cap space. You gave up a second-round pick. It's clearly not good. Mm-hmm. But you had a reason to do it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, why would you have done that? No one's got a gun at their like. You have to do it. Like, okay, so they do it. Then it gets voided. Well, now the guy scores and becomes a huge, important part of your team. You look bad, right?
Yeah,
it's bad on the organization. Yeah.
Right. Like, why did you do that in the first place? Like, they can't win. If he's terrible, they would have loved to have given him away on the trade pick. If he's amazing, you look like morons for trading a second-round pick to get rid of the guy who's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a no-win situation in so many different facets. For the team,
Crazy.
For Dadanov, for everyone. And, of course, Ottawa is to blame.
Yeah.
Well, I think Anaheim gets screwed more than anything. They should have a second-round pick, a usable player that will probably be a trade chip next season, and getting rid of another contract. Like, what a nightmare for them. And they didn't do anything wrong. Poor Pat Verbeek.
Yeah. Yep, they just,
Welcome to the NHL general managing, bud.
Yeah, it's such a crazy roller coaster every year come this time.
Do you think, I know it's hard to say now with him scoring these important goals, but do you think Dadonov still might get traded? Because again, Elliot Friedman was talking about this, and Seattle was one of the teams that he mentioned. I mean, do you think that still has a chance of happening? Because you've still got the cap reality.
100%. Like you said, there is still some reason that on March 21st, Monday, they thought we need $3.5 million and we will pay the price to make that happen. So what has happened between then? There is another injury that has popped up, and actually 3, but one that's of significance in regards to the cap. They had one where Brett Howden got crunched into the boards, looked real bad. He got stretchered off. He makes like $1 million. I think he's going to be okay. They'll be fine there. The second one is Nolan Patrick. He makes like $1 million. He gets injured every single time he plays. The last one was Max Pacioretty, who was ready to play the very first game they had come back home. And that was one where you're like, okay, well, Alec Martinez is coming in. That's $5 million. Pacioretty's coming back in. That's $7 million. Now you need some money here. And so that looked like that's where they needed the money. Well, morning skate, he's in power play practice, takes a shot and hurts himself and has to leave and doesn't play in the game and probably isn't going on this trip. So now all of a sudden, maybe they have $7 million more in space that can go on LTIR, but you don't want Evgeny Dadanov instead of Max Pacioretty. Like, nobody wants that. So if Max Pacioretty gets healthy, which he has done in remarkable speed a number of times, he broke his foot and was back in 3 weeks. It was insane. And then skated once and played. We're like, what is happening? So I don't think he'll be out for the season. And then eventually, they are going to need to do something. And Seattle would make perfect sense to be a team to do it.
Yeah. Do you think the price now, because everyone understands Vegas's reality, do you think the price is going to be a lot more than a second rounder?
I think the fact that the Golden Knights were taking on that extra salary, that kind of lessened the price in the first place. So it probably was a first round pick in the first place. I do think that one less year of Dadonov, so wherever he happens to go, he literally cannot play, so it wipes out the rest of this season. He only has one more year left, and the Golden Knights are not taking the salary on back, so it does shift the balance a little bit. I would guess they're probably going to have to give up a first-round pick if it's him. If it's someone else, like I don't know what the cost would be on an injured Riley Smith. Like if Riley Smith would have been able to come back and can only play 5 games, but he could have come back, so they have to take him off LTIR, and his contract expires the second the season's over. And if they're out of the playoffs, I don't know what the cost would be on that. But again, someone should step up and take that. Like if he's available, step up and take it. Like take your free 3rd-round pick to deal with your cap space. Like I feel like that's something that a team like Seattle, who that is your best asset at the moment, is we have loads of cap space. You have to take advantage of this at every single pass and find a way to collect some assets. And that's, I think the Golden Knights are going to have to give something away, whether that's before the season ends or in the off season, and Seattle should be in the middle of it.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised given the last couple of years we'd seen more and more teams out of it with cap space kind of take on that role of, helping out trades get facilitated and all that stuff, being the broker. And this year we really didn't see that. This was really the only trade that had anything to do with it. And then of course it gets voided. So it was kind of surprising this year for me.
Yep. And isn't it nice, Dylan, that we don't have to be salary cap experts every single day yet? I know the Kraken will get there at some point where we'll be talking about LTIR and like, all right, this guy got called up today, but it is nice not have to deal with that at the moment.
Yeah.
It's not fun. Nice. Trust me. It is not fun because you'll never understand all the rules, and there'll be rules like for instance, the no trade clause thing. Like when Elliot Friedman and Pierre LeBrun are writing stories that they didn't know where the trade clause is, like, how the hell am I supposed to know? I'm just some lunatic in Vegas. Like, what am I supposed to know? I don't talk to Bettman every 5 minutes. It's just bogus, man.
Yeah, I didn't even know that the player couldn't, after the trade deadline, if the trade was made, I thought they couldn't play in the playoffs. And apparently that was changed recently.
Yeah, most people thought that. I had always been under the assumption that was the case too, and now apparently you're out for the rest of the season. I don't think it makes a huge difference. Either way, so it's 20 games after the deadline. So at worst he could play 20 games. But then if you're in a playoff chase and you buy a player that played 20 games and then he can't play in the playoffs, like what are you doing?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's talk rivalry. Because I know, you mentioned the first game as being kind of the high point of Vegas' season.
Fun.
The stick twirl that somehow set everyone off.
Amazing.
But still, I know. Even after that, the Kraken and Golden Knights are not rivals right now. But no. I think there's an opportunity for something to brew here this week. Because, as you know, the Golden Knights need these 4 points. And for the first time, really, in the Kraken's history, they have a chance to take away something from another team that they don't just want, but they need. So I could see some bad blood kind of start to boil here. Like, what do you think the likelihood is of the Golden Knights and the Kraken developing a rivalry?
I think down the road, it's certainly possible. Obviously, just that first moment, for whatever reason, the Golden Knights took it personally. And I still don't fully understand how Mark Stone, who is known for wild, crazy celebrations, wasn't able to understand that was a massive goal for Morgan Geekie. Like, I don't know. I still make fun of them for it. And like, I will make fun of Mark Stone to his face the next time I get to chat with him, just because, like, seriously? Either way, I think that, like, the back-to-back games, not back-to-back nights, but back-to-back games, is something that does usually seem to have the ability to kind of raise the temperature of these games. I think that is certainly possible. It'll really depend on how the first game goes. I think the way that these are going to go is I think one of them is going to be close and one is not. Just based on the way that Seattle has been playing, they do allow a lot of transition. Vegas is a team that has to have transition. I think there will be one of these games. I would assume the first one that they'll allow a whole bunch of transition. Vegas will hit 2 or 3 in a period, and that'll just basically be it for that game. Then it comes down to how feisty does Seattle want to get? How badly do they actually want to beat them? Like, we sit here and say, well, yeah, this means a lot to Vegas. I think the Seattle players should be up for it. But if it's 2-0, that could go away in a hurry because they'll just remember, well, we don't really have anything to play for and we're probably not coming back. So I think it's possible that we don't see anything. We saw the schedule last year where they did play back-to-back games against every single same team last year, and we didn't see this kind of madness that we kind of maybe thought was going to happen as much, certainly with the Golden Knights. They're not a very physical team, so they're not going to hit you. Seattle hasn't hit much either, right?
No.
that correct? Yeah. So I don't think you're going to see a massively physical game. It's going to come down to how the game goes. If the game goes like the game in Chicago just went, where one team has a big lead, the other one comes back, they take the lead back, they tie it again. Like Chicago was pumped towards the end of that game, and they really wanted that game, and it turned into a really fun game. If that's the case of the first game, then the second game is going to be super intense. And I think we can start to see something. And as Seattle grows, there's no doubt, like, I'm not sure how much people in Seattle realize this. The Golden Knights were very, very, very jealous of Seattle coming in. Like, they felt like they were losing their thunder. They felt like we don't want them to be good. We don't want don't look at their production. Don't look at any of this. Like, we're still the shiny toy. They go out and buy Jack Eichel in the middle of that. As Seattle drifted and didn't play very well this season, it became easier for Vegas just, whatever. I think if Seattle does kind of come up and play a little bit better, and if they're the reason why the season ends, like, yeah, you certainly could see something. And then I bet you they would probably put them against each other early next season again, would be my guess. Mm-hmm. I think the NHL is going to lean on that moving forward.
Yeah, I would think so. And it makes sense. And I do think that there's going to be this really nice period of hopefully more than just one season where this build for Seattle kind of catches up and they start to become a competitive team while Vegas still is very much in their window. I do have like kind of a quick question. As like RJ talked about earlier, Vegas has done a lot of, selling off pieces, buying players, right? Bringing in Jack Eichels. At some point, this house of cards that they're assembling is going to have to fall. What do you think the timetable for that is?
Yeah, I mean, if they're not healthy, the house of cards is down, like it's gone, and this is what it would look like if if they can't have a full roster. This is what it can look like. Now, as they get moving forward, they're going to try and retool and reshape the roster, and at very worst, they're going to have Mark Stone, Jack Eichel, and Alex Pietrangelo. Like, that's a pretty good trio of players, and then probably Robin Lehner behind them, who we can disagree. I don't know. I think he's fine. I don't think he's amazing. I think he's fine. It's a pretty good core of players. So it's unlikely that they become horrible all that soon. But one injury here or there, and all of a sudden you don't look so good. They do not have much of anything in regards to draft picks. Like, if they had Matty Beniers, he would be without question the best player in the Golden Knights system. It wouldn't even be close. They don't have much in regards to draft assets moving forward. Their first pick goes to Buffalo unless it's top 10, which it's not going to be, unless I guess they could hit the lottery. But if that happens, they don't have it next year. They're missing a number of second round picks. The third round picks are kind of there, but they don't have a lot of value. Like, they're an aging team. There's not a lot of young talent already drafted. So they're definitely in a position where they're going to try to extend this window as far as they can. And that's, I guess, a little bit of my concern in regards to, will there be a Vegas-Seattle rivalry? Is I think when Seattle's ready, that's when Vegas is going to be starting to retool. It kind of happened with us in LA, where we thought that was going to be the rivalry. LA was on the downturn when Vegas was on the up, and now as Vegas hits the down again, LA's coming back up. So it's just missing a little bit. So that's the one part that I think Seattle is going to be good down the road. I just don't know that Vegas is going to be good at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's definitely been one of the things that a large part of, our fan base and the Seattle fan base has been talking about, is just the idea of, yes, once we got over the initial shock of how the season was going, which, it was a hard pill to swallow at first, no doubt about that. Just that, yes, no, we are in a very, very good position moving forward. We seem to have nailed like just about every pick in the one draft we've had so far. We got a great star in Matty Beniers. And future star in Matty Beniers, and then the amount of draft picks that Ron Francis was able to assemble this trade deadline was also incredible. And yeah, I don't think that people quite have it in total perspective yet, but compared to some other teams, including a Vegas, like just this gluttony of stuff we have is just so great, and it's going to be so great for Seattle moving forward.
For sure.
All right, so the other question, one question that I've been interested in is kind of how Vegas became such a great hockey market, right? Not a lot of history there. Seattle, obviously, we have WHL stuff in town. You got the Silvertips and the Thunderbirds nearby. You've got 4 teams in Washington State, all that stuff. You have, the first American team to ever win the Stanley Cup in the Metropolitans, even if it was over 100 years ago. There was history there. Not as much so in Vegas. And I am curious because obviously winning helps. We know that for all sports in all markets. Winning is a big part of things. But how did the Golden Knights do such a good job of building this, awesome fan base that you guys have there?
Yeah, it was kind of the perfect storm in many ways. Like, I'll start by, because I know if anybody from Vegas is listening or watching this, they're going to go nuts at me if I don't at least mention it. We did have 2 minor league teams. We've actually had like 6, but they folded real quick. The Las Vegas Ice Dice is my favorite name. But the Las Vegas Wranglers and the Thunder both were around there. There are players that were there, like Mike McKenna, who is on the show with me, the former goalie. He played for the Wranglers. So there is some history, but it was minimal. It was low level. It's not the same. So what happened was, the first thing first is Vegas has been starving for something to call their own. Like, I think if you look at basically any other city, most cities that are getting NHL teams or have multiple other teams. Seattle, you have baseball, you have football, you had basketball there for a while. MLS is a good one too. You never really needed something to say I live there. You can always say, well, I'm a Mariners fan. Okay, well then you're from Seattle. We didn't have that. We literally had like those stupid hats from the airport that said Las Vegas that tourists are supposed to buy. Like we don't have anything, and we never have had anything, to a point where we had a Little League World Series team in 2016 that was awesome. They went to the final and lost to a team in Chicago that cheated, and we ended up getting the banner. Shout out to that team. People were all about that team, and people are wearing hats of this Mountain Ridge Little League team because it was something to grasp onto. So I always thought the first team was going to get that. Everyone's just going to grasp onto that solely because I can finally tell people I'm from Vegas. I live in Vegas. So that was always going to be good. Then we had the most horrific tragedy, like one of the worst in American history, 9 days before they played their first home game, 6 days before they played their first game. That kind of became the place for people to gather and, support each other and support the city and show how, we're here for each other in this city. And, that was the place to do it. We didn't have that before. What we have all gone to the top of the stratosphere or some shit. I don't know. We had a hockey team now, so everybody went for that. That was kind of a huge part of it. Then they won, and they didn't stop winning, and they played a season that was basically perfect throughout the entire season. Anytime there was a big home game, they won it. Anytime there was a lull in things going wrong, they did something to bring in something new. And it became this story that was so unbelievably lovable that you couldn't help but want to like that team. Is anyone cheering against St. Peter's in the basketball game today? No, that's what the Golden Knights were in that season. It was a improbable run that everyone loved, and then there were characters that were very lovable. Nate Schmidt, Marc-Andre Fleury, Alex Tuck, even Carlson and Marcia. So there were so many players that people bonded with and understood, and they were, it became this team that people not only loved that they were representing Vegas, but also loved who the guys were. And then they go all the way to the Cup final. You can't write a better script to make a city love a sport. And I still will make the argument they do not love hockey. It's fine. I have no problem with that. The city of Las Vegas does not love hockey. They love the fact that we had a winner, and they want that back. And hopefully we will get that back. That's what the city fell in love with. And I think more and more you watch the sport, nobody doesn't like hockey if you watch it and understand what's going on. It's amazing. So that's going to happen over time, but that's why I think it happened. And now, we've got minor league teams, and we're getting some, I don't know what this junior league that's coming out here, I don't know what that is. There's some 3-on-3 tournament that's coming here too that they want me to talk about. So I don't know, a lot going on.
Yeah. I guess two follow-ups to that. First one being, how is having the Raiders come into town kind of affected things for the Golden Knights? Is there a nice kind of, shared group there? Or...
I mean, the Raiders are the Raiders. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like pretty much everybody either is a Raider fan or you're like, yeah, I don't really like the Raiders. Like,
Hmm.
that's kind of me. Like, I don't like the Raiders. I never have. Like, my team beat them in the Super Bowl 18, 19 years ago or whatever it is now. So I've never been a Raiders guy. I don't care. I don't think they represent Vegas. They represent the Raiders. Where I think Vegas, the Golden Knights still represent Vegas. It's fading because they keep doing shady shit. But, like, I do think that it hasn't had that much of an impact. The biggest place where it's probably had the most impact is they don't lead off on Sundays with the Golden Knights game on the local news. They're not front page when the Raiders do something, which in the end, I don't think that's going to matter. We've had 5 years. If you don't know what the Golden Knights are, you're never going to know what the Golden Knights are. So I don't think it's made a huge difference. For me, it's nice because there's less media at games.
Yeah, and then my second follow up is just, why did it take so long for Vegas to get pro sports team in town? Like, it's this great entertainment capital. Pro sports is like one of the largest entertainment businesses in the world. What the hell took so long?
Yeah, to borrow a phrase from the great Drew Timmy of Gonzaga, a lot of people were soft guys, well, a different way to use the P word there, that they were afraid of the gambling. They just thought if we put a sport there, they're going to throw games. Like, that's basically what people thought. And it's been ridiculous for at least 20 years now. Like, basically since players started making money.
Mhm.
Once, like, the A-Rod contract is one that I would say would probably have been one where it's like, hey, he's making $200 million. Do you really think he's going to throw a baseball game for 100,000? Like, no way. So once we got to that point, I think that's when people started to realize it. And then there is an argument that it is not the largest city. We're still basically at 2 million. So it's not a massive city. It is very low on the TV ranking numbers, and that they had to just believe, and eventually, they went Ted Lasso, hit the sign, and off we go.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to go back to the Jack Eichel trade real quick because we mentioned that, and it's been a little while since that's happened, and I'm just curious because you're covering the team a lot closer to it. How has that gone since the trade has been made? I mean, when it's just so rare to bring in a star player at that age, at the height of his powers, really. How has Eichel adjusted to Vegas? How have the team adjusted to him? I mean, how's that all gone?
So when they first got him, obviously they were trying to make as much of a deal as you can because you're right, you don't get 25-year-old top 10 NHL players very often. Like, that's not common. Actually, this team has kind of had three, but Petrangelo and Stone and Pacioretty, whatever, they've done this. But the problem with him was he was hurt and he wasn't going to play anytime soon, and everyone knew that. And they also had to play a game where they couldn't even try to put a good timeline on it. We always kind of knew mid-February, but also that was supposed to be the Olympic break. So we were looking at, like, now as when he could potentially be getting in, and it's real hard to sell a fan base that already loves their team on a player that's on the shelf for months, and the team was actually winning at that time. But the moment he came in, so he comes in, plays his very first game the same day Mark Stone goes on LTIR. That's a completely different story, another animal. But that's where we really started to see people like, oh, he's here. Like, this is wild. This is awesome. And people really enjoyed it. The problem is they've not done a lot of winning since he's been here. It's not been his fault, in my opinion, at all. I think he's been great. I do think he sucked last game, and he agrees with me. Good job, Jack. Made me look real good. But, like, I do think that they're going to have to win for him to truly be a fan favorite. And if he comes in and they lose from now until the future, like, it's going to fall on him. That's disappointing for him, but that's pro sports.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
go for it,
go
RJ.
Well, I was going to say, how do you think? I mean, I love that answer too. I thought he sucked last game. He agreed. How has this kind of personality meshed with the market? Because I feel like it might be a pretty good fit.
Yeah, he's different. Like he's not like a lot of other people we've seen. He's got a pretty real sense of humor in regards to he will say I'm not very good. He will be pretty honest about like what happened with him in Buffalo or what's going on. But he also there's a confidence there that historically has turned a lot of people off in Buffalo specifically, where he'll say, I played great. Not everyone else played great. We lost. And that doesn't go well with a team that's losing. I think so far, there have been people that have kind of picked on him a little bit because, like, well, your team sucked there before. You came here, we've been awesome, and now we suck. Like, it's got to be you. I don't think everyone's on that, but I think enough people are that they're going to be a little turned off by how he answers some questions. But in the end, like you watch the guy enough, you got to be out of your mind if you think this guy's not, if this guy's the reason why they stink. I do think I didn't like his game at all last night, and I would have been all over him had he not scored the game-tying goal and they come back and win, because he was doing the things that scared me from what I had read and watched in Buffalo, which is like he will fly the zone, he will, have these defensive lapses that you cannot have when you're pushing to win a Stanley Cup, and this team's not, but they are pushing to make the playoffs. So it's interesting, and kind of I do think whether they make the playoffs or not is going to be a lot of how people are going to feel about Jack Eichel.
Yeah.
Which sucks for him. He can't control it.
Yeah, no, it's kind of, yeah, you get out of the Buffalo situation, which was bad for numerous reasons, but yes, you're thrown into just out of one fire into another, essentially.
Yeah, in a fire that's like, what do you do about it? Like my line mates are Jake Lecision and Jonas Rönnbjerg. Like,
Yeah,
what do you want me to do?
yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
those
Yeah, no, it's everyone gets it. What'd you think of the return? Because I think that there were some people around the league that kind of looked at it and were like, well, that's all it took to get Eichel. Like, why didn't my team go and do that?
Um, I mean, I think that's probably underestimating Alex Tuck's ability a little bit. I think he's an elite player that in the
Hmm.
right situation is going to thrive. I think they bought their future captain, and I don't think that was going to be. I don't think any other team probably was offering up a future captain. Like I'd have to go around and look at maybe like if there was a Gaudreau or Kachuk or something from you know I actually thought Seattle probably should have been involved in that in some way because, like you said, like if it's Berniers and somebody else, like Jack Eichel might be better than that moving forward. But first round pick, Alex Tuck and Peyton Krebs. I think Peyton Krebs is a legitimate top six NHL player. I think Alex Tuck is like one of the better players on a team eventually, and probably their captain and a perfect fit for Buffalo, and the perfect human to go step into that. I thought it was all right. Like, yeah, he's Jack Eichel. Probably should have been 5 first round picks instead of 3. But
Hmm.
but then there's Vegas has to, the ripple effect on Vegas is, well, now you have to make a trade that you hate that gets reverted.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
and you gave up essentially like your one top prospect
right.
and more of your future that was
And
already
you never
thin.
cap space to take it on in the first place, so you're going to have to solve that problem down the road. So it's going to cost them, in the end, it's going to cost them 6 assets,
Yeah, exactly.
which is a lot.
Yeah.
Yes,
Uh,
my dog agrees.
yeah. You have another question, RJ?
Uh, let's see.
No,
That's
I guess you don't then.
Stop going out of order. Can't go out of order.
I know. No, I think that was pretty good. I think we got a good comprehensive, deep dive into where Vegas is at this year, kind of the history of everything. I mean, obviously your guys' inaugural season went a little better than ours. I'm sure you have a lot more fun and very exciting memories than maybe we've been able to compile, although we've made our own, special stuff.
Time.
Yeah,
yeah.
You got the
exactly.
fit.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I do have another question. So, Ken, we know you're coming up to Seattle
Hmm.
for these 2 games. Have you been to Seattle before? What's your experience with the city?
I have been to Seattle 3 times. My brother lives there. I probably should go more based on that fact, but he's lived there for quite a while. But I live in Vegas, so it's like just come here. I don't. But yeah, my only issue with Seattle is everything seems so damn far away from each other. Like the airport is far from the stadiums. It's far from his house. Everything seems so far. I'm used to like Vegas where it's like, yeah, 15 minutes and I'm on the strip, or 15 minutes and I'm anywhere else. And I live 15 minutes out, which is like 15 miles. 15 miles in Seattle, I feel like it's going to take me an hour.
Yeah, it will.
Everything is far. Certainly the airport. I mean, that'll take you a while.
And I like the sun. You guys, can I get some sun a little bit when I'm up there this week? Anything?
We've been getting some sun. Like every other day, we'll get some sun that peeks out. So
okay. I'll take one. I just don't want it to rain the whole time.
I was gonna say, I don't know. I would take that right now. I'm down in LA. The moment
What's the deal on the bridge, by the way? My brother has been complaining about this
the
bridge.
West Seattle bridge. Yes. So if he lives in West Seattle, that's going to make things super difficult because you got to go all the long way around. So they're renovating the bridge and it's totally shut down. While they're doing that, but they've had issues, I think, with the concrete workers, the steel workers. One of them were striking, and so
worse.
Yeah, just indefinitely. Don't know how long it's going to take. Basically, until the strike ends. So it's been longer than expected for sure. It's a hassle to get over to West Seattle.
What about getting to the practice facility? Can I get from that? And where is that?
Okay, that's in Northgate, so that's about a 15-minute drive north from the arena, and that's fine. No problem there. You just take the 5, go up. That'll be easy.
Is it in a mall? Someone told me it's in a mall.
So there's a shopping center around it. It's the site of the former Northgate Mall, which they, tore down a lot of those like retail buildings.
So it is a mall.
Yeah, basically.
Okay. It's not in a mall. It used to be a mall.
It used to be a mall. Exactly.
Yeah. It's not like those.
Very confused.
Yeah, no, it's not like those public rinks in the middle of a mall or something that you'll see in places.
That would be kind of awesome. I was thinking like if you go into one of those malls and there's like one of those like kid fun zones, and there's all the tubes, like that's what it is. Like I'm just in the mall and then there's that over. Hey, by the way, there's a Kraken practice here. Like, okay. I'm hoping because the Golden Knights are there for 4 days, so I'm hoping to get out to a practice. They're coming up tomorrow. And then they're staying the day after the second game because they play in Vancouver, and one less day in Canada is better for everybody.
Right. Yeah. So that'll be a fun time. It'll be super easy to get up. I'm sure you'll be able to see a practice. The light rail also just takes you right there.
Nice.
Stop that drops off. So super easy. That's how a lot of the writers I know get up there.
Sweet.
Yeah, so cool. All right, thanks so much for joining us, Ken. I really appreciate it, and all the information you've given us. Do you want to give kind of a quick shout out to where everybody can find you and your work and all the stuff that you guys do?
Based on my background, I'm noticing now it says it 4 times just over my shoulder. So go any of here or here or here or here. My pointing's struggling. It's just SinBin.Vegas. We don't have a .com. Seemed like a lot of work to have a .com, so we have a .Vegas. .Vegas is cool. That's SinBin.Vegas on Twitter. Like, you Google us, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, and we'll stick all the links. We'll stick all the links down in the description below as well.
You'll figure it out.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much for joining us, Ken. We really appreciate it. And we'll see everybody next time.
Don't beat us both times, please.
Yeah, well, no promises. We're really pumped up about the idea of doing this, by the way. Like, everybody's on board. If we only, let's only win 2 more games this season, keep the good draft position, but let's make it sure these are the games.
Yeah.